So today we're going to be talking about, as Chris said, it's a bit of a passion project of mine. It's the Caucasus region. It's made up of 3 countries, Armenia, Georgia, and Azerbaijan. And they're kind of this special little region, and not many people kind of think about it. It's one of those destinations that people kind of go to after they've already done all the big ones. So I just want to kind of go over the region because I know not a lot of people are super familiar with it. So we'll just kind of jump in, get started. So I like to start off with a map just because I know that it's not a familiar destination for a lot of people. And I think that it just kind of helps to see it. So I probably should get a map that includes the other areas. But so the 3 countries are sitting here, and they're kind of on this little strip of land between the Black Sea and the Caspian Sea. Georgia, which is here, borders Turkey and Armenia, so it kind of has a border with all of them. And Armenia and Azerbaijan down here kind of share a border with Iran, which you can't see, but just to kind of give you an idea of where they are. And then Russia is kind of a big looming presence up here that comes down and connects with Georgia at the top. So it's just kind of to give you an idea of where it is location-wise, and 2, just kind of how the geography shaped this area as far as the culture, it being kind of a crossroads between the Middle East and Russia and the Silk and Spice Road. So it kind of has this really special history that's just made up by sheer happenstance of where it is located in the world. So I like to go over the why and when. So anyone with an interest in Christianity, Jewish heritage, the Soviet era, Spice Road, Silk Road, will find this region really interesting. Foodies are going to be super impressed with the spreads in all of these countries, but I'm not going to lie, Georgia's kind of the standout when it comes to the food and wine. So you kind of have these 3 large capitals that you can stick to if you have people who don't like to switch hotels very often, and you can do most of your sightseeing from the 3 capitals of Yerevan, Tbilisi, and Baku. You are right at that crossroads of East and West, so you have lots of different influences of, very European things, very Middle Eastern things, and some like Asian things. It's a very rich history. You have Armenia was the first country in the world to take Christianity as its official religion. So, I mean, it's even beating out Rome. So it's really this interesting history that's here. You have caravanserai places from the Silk and Spice Roads. You have these breathtaking landscapes, mountainous regions and valleys and, riverbeds. So just really beautiful scenery. They do have some really world-class museums. And as far as when to go, spring, fall, or early summer. So it is a very continental climate. So in dead summer, it is going to be very, very hot. And while the hotels that we use do have air conditioning, not all of the sites and museums will. And then you can go in winter, but some of the road passes will be blocked because they do get snowfall, especially like in the mountainous regions in Georgia and Armenia. And then it's not up here, but I kind of like to add a who, because this is a unique destination and that it's not necessarily the right destination for everybody. It does have some challenges and guests have to be prepared for them. So many of the sites are located uphill and vehicles can only get so close to them. Additionally, it is an area with a lot of ancient sites. So you're talking uneven cobblestone roads, limited things like elevators, handrails, etc. So guests just have to be prepared to be able to walk up and down hills and stairs along uneven surfaces. So it's not that you have to be, a marathon runner to go here, but just if any guests have mobility issues, it's definitely something that they should take into account when they're considering this destination. It is a developing region as far as infrastructure goes, and that's especially going to be true in Armenia. So that means that there are great hotels in each of the capitals, but if you leave the capitals, the hotel choices sometimes go down a little bit. And it also means that roads, when you leave the big capital cities, typically get a little rougher. So just, something like we like to prepare people for, this is not, Germany, it's not Austria. It's getting better, but it's not quite there. And then one of the things is English is just not as prevalently spoken here. So Russian is still the typical first or second language, depending on how old the person from the area is. And as a result, guides, while knowledgeable and wonderful, they might have stronger accents than our guides in our other places. So if you've booked travel with us before, like if even in Russia, we have guides with beautiful, almost unaccented English. But when you get to this region, they've learned Russian and either Georgian, Armenian, or Azeri as their first and second languages, and English is a third. So they're definitely learning it later in life, and they can be a little more accented because of that. So just not trying to turn anyone off, but I always like to be really honest about, what the pros and the cons are for a destination. So we're going to kind of delve into the individual countries a little more. So we'll start with Armenia. This is kind of, people will either go to Armenia because they're going as a part of a general Caucasus tour, or we do see some people going to Armenia as a part of a heritage tour. We're seeing a lot of second and third generation Armenian Americans who want to kind of go back and see their roots. And so we are seeing some Armenia only programs. Most people here are going to stay in Yerevan for the whole time. They might do one night in Dilajan or the Sevan area, but predominantly people will stay in Yerevan and then do day trips out to the other sites. Armenia does have tense relations with its neighbors, Turkey and Azerbaijan. So as a result, the borders are closed between those two nations and Armenia. It's not that there's a big problem. It just means that you can't fly directly from Azerbaijan into Armenia, and all of the road borders are closed between those countries. So it just means that logistically you have to do things a little differently than maybe sometimes you would. So as I mentioned, Armenia it's going to be the poorest country in the area, and that's going to be evident from everything from the infrastructure to the quality of the housing that you're going to see when you visit. It is actually getting a lot better. They kind of have been taking a look at how well Georgia's been doing because it's invested so heavily in tourism, and they've seen what a boom that's been for the country as a whole, and so they're trying to capture some of that interest. So the last time I was there, they were doing massive road works to really build up the roads to make them better to transport tourists. All right, so as I mentioned, the capital is Yerevan. This is where most people are going to stay. It's the focal point of the city is going to be Republic Square, which you can see in the picture. It is this beautiful square, and I always tell everyone that they should go there at night. They do this beautiful light and water show in the fountain with music, and locals will come out. You'll see them dancing or just like hanging around having a cocktail at one of the cafes nearby or an ice cream. It's just kind of a really lovely evening activity that you don't have to plan for. You can just show up, and it's very local because the locals are enjoying it as well. And the city has a lot of sites, including the National Museum. There's a medieval manuscript museum called the Matandaren. There's the Armenian Genocide Museum. And there's, of course, monasteries galore, the first Christian nation. They went all in on it, and there are monasteries. Beautiful, but you definitely have a choice of which ones you want to see. To me, when you're talking about the city itself, the most important site is going to be the Armenian Genocide Museum and Memorial. It's really well done, and it's not to be missed in the sense that I don't think you can really understand modern Armenia and Armenians without kind of going to this museum and understanding the history with the genocide and how the country developed afterwards as a result. Mount Ararat, which is traditionally considered an Armenian site. It's one of the most important religious sites for Armenians, but it's actually now located inside of Turkey. So you can't go to the mountain itself, but luckily the best views of the mountain are actually from the Armenian side. So this picture is looking at Mount Ararat from the Armenian side. So we like to get guests up a little bit early so they can go and check it out before kind of the clouds roll in for the day. Then we have Garni. This is where the Temple of the Sun is. It's a first century Greco-Roman temple. It's unique and well preserved. And as you can see from the picture, it's kind of set in this really captivating, scenic overhang looking at mountains. So it's really a beautiful site. It's interesting. You know, it doesn't take long to see it, but it's one of those beautiful sites that people definitely want to check out. This is perhaps my favorite site in Armenia. It's Yerevan. It is the monastery that I think if you had to choose one, for me, this would be it. It's a medieval monastery and it's located along these beautiful red cliffed mountains. You can walk through the different parts of it. There's a restaurant nearby that we can do a beautiful outdoor lunch that kind of overlooks these red cliffed mountains. So to me, this is, if I only got to see one monastery in Armenia, this one would be it. Then there is Lake Sevan. So this is the Switzerland of Armenia. It's really lovely. You can do a boat ride along the lake. And this is kind of the area that I was mentioning if people wanted to have one night outside of Yerevan, especially if they're going to go by land between Armenia and Georgia. Typically, they'll stay in this region, either at one of the hotels here along the lake or in a town called Dynamometer. So textiles and handicrafts. Armenia, like many Soviet countries after the Soviet Union fell, Armenia has been trying to reclaim its handicraft heritage because the Soviets were not into that, and so they kind of did away with traditional handicrafts. So there are some, pioneers who are working to bring it back, and we can arrange visits with some of the producers who work for nonprofits. These nonprofits kind of hire locals and teach them these traditions, and it helps provide income for rural families. So we can arrange special meetings there. And the big handicraft here is Armenian carpet weaving. There's a few countries in the world that argue over who is the original carpet weaver. Armenia is in the run for it. So you can go and visit a traditional Armenian carpet weaving workshop, or if you're interested in purchasing them, of course, we can help arrange that as well. So for hotels, in Yerevan itself, the Alexander is our top choice. So it opened in 2018, and it is the most luxurious hotel in Yerevan, and quite frankly, in the whole of the country. It is a Marriott Luxury Collection hotel, but it's done really well. When I first stayed there, it had only been open, I think, for 8 months. And it was really, really well done. The staff was phenomenal. It is really well located. It's near some wonderful restaurants. In fact, some of our favorite restaurants. There are shops right outside of it. It's only a 6 to 9 minute walk to Republic Square. So it's just this really lovely hotel, perfect location. And we're really happy to have it because prior to this, there really wasn't a true 5-star luxury property in the capital. If they're staying outside of Yerevan for that one night, we kind of like this Tafinkian in Old Dillijum. It is not a luxury property. It is rustic, it's charming, but it's not luxury. It's a local brand, the Tafinkian brand. It's an American-Armenian gentleman who started it, and he uses Armenian architects, only Armenian wood and methods of building and materials to build the hotels. And so this is the best hotel in the area, and it really allows you to see the countryside. But if you have clients who might not like the more rustic charm of something like this, then we would just have them fly to Tbilisi instead of going via land. All right, so now we're going to move on to Georgia. It's definitely the country with the best tourism industry of the three. It is gaining popularity specifically for its food and wine, the culture it has around food and wine, as well as its hiking and kind of outdoor scenery. You could easily spend 6 to 10 days just exploring Georgia alone and still not see it all. So I just want to point out a few of our favorite places that a first-time visitor we would recommend for a first-time visitor. So obviously the capital of Tbilisi. It's really a great introduction. You can base yourself here if you have clients who don't want to do a lot of hotel moving. They could easily base themselves here and do most of the other sites as day trips. And I just like to kind of include some pictures that just kind of show the vibrancy. So you have this old town with the medieval fortress above it, and you see a gentleman down on the bottom left hand, and he's kind of baking their traditional khachapuri breads there. You know, you have on the top right, you have these traditional sweet shops that are made by dipping fruits and nuts into like a really reduced grape juice or apricot juice. So it's kind of like a traditional dessert there. So just to kind of show you some of the beautifulness that is this country. There's no way you can talk about Georgia and not talk about Georgian food. It deserves its own slide plus some. It's kind of being hailed as the last great undiscovered European cuisine. It's really great in that it's a lot of fresh produce and grilled meats, local cheeses, these beautiful handmade sauces. It's actually, in a very strange way, even though they do serve a lot of meat, it's actually a place that's pretty easy for vegetarians to eat because so many dishes are salad dishes, salad-based dishes, vegetable-based dishes that, and they are almost always served family style. So it's actually fairly easy for even vegetarians to eat. And I can't say that for all of our post-Soviet kind of destinations that we do. And then here we have some extraordinary experiences. You can see beautiful Ola and Carissa here doing a khachapuri making class. If you've never tried this food, it is amazing. It's basically like halfway between cheese bread and a sauceless pizza. It's just phenomenal. If you're lucky enough to live in like New York or DC or the LA area, you can probably find this. I know there's some Georgian restaurants popping up in America, and those places are kind of hotbeds for it. So if you haven't yet checked it out, I highly recommend it. It'll change your life.
I sorry to interrupt you, Jody.
Yeah.
There's a question from Fernanda on the call. From Armenia to Georgia, you can go by road or plane, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes. So yeah, we like people, if they want to go and kind of really spend the night out in the more rural area in that like Sevan and Dilijan area, then they would want to go via land and just overnight. Otherwise, they can fly there. It's like a 1-hour flight between Tbilisi and Yerevan. Typically, flights cost something like $90 to $130. So it's not a super expensive flight, super quick. So it just depends. We have people who do it both ways. So it's just whatever the client wants to do. Some other extraordinary experiences that we do here as well. So Georgia is the oldest winemaking region in the world, though Armenia would argue with that. So, you know, winery visits are really big here. So we can do everything from just a typical like winery visit with this tasting to a really special experience. My favorite is actually this gentleman you see up here. His name is Iago, and he runs a small traditional winery. And you can go to his family's vineyard and have dinner there. And they do a wine pairing with the dinner. And they have these, a local group of, they're called Degori singers, and it's polyphonic singing. And they do traditional Toastmaster, which is a very big thing in Georgia. You have an official Toastmaster who gives toasts, and if anyone at the table outdoes him, he has to kind of one-up them. And it's a really special experience. I've never had anyone have anything less than amazing things to say about it. And it's the thing that if I go to Georgia, I'm like, please let this be on my itinerary, because it's a thing I want to do again and again and again. Another region, Shecky. This is kind of the spiritual heart of the country, and it was the original capital of the country as well. So here, the big site is this like cathedral that you see here. It's really beautiful. It's kind of a tiny town built around the cathedral and monastery. And it is also good. It's a place where you can find some local goods. They have some local shops around the cathedral. In fact, I have a beautiful traditional tablecloth that I got here in Shecky. And Gori. So this is kind of a must-do or a must-skip for many. This is the home of Stalin. So Stalin was Georgian, and this is where he is from. So the museum felt very propagandish for many years. So it was kind of just a museum dedicated to all of the good things that Stalin did and kind of just glossed over all of the awful things. So they did add a second exhibition that demonstrates the darker side of the Soviet leader. And they kind of left the rest of the museum because they also wanted to show that this is how people thought about Stalin, even here in Georgia for many, many years. So it's kind of interesting. And again, people either definitely want to see it or they have no interest in it whatsoever. So those were, by the way, all things that you could do as day trips from Tbilisi. So all of those sites, all of those areas can be visited as day trips from Tbilisi. So now I just want to go into the hotels that are in Tbilisi itself. So if you have anyone who likes architecture, design hotels, or kind of wants a more boutique hotel feel, the Stamba in Tbilisi is going to be the perfect choice. They recently renovated it starting last year they had a casino in it. That's kind of a popular thing in Georgia. So they actually removed the casino and they are putting in additional rooms. The in-house restaurant here is gorgeous. And it's really popular even with the locals. So they have like their own chocolaterie and a little bar, and the locals really love it because it has this very cool, very trendy, cool atmosphere. I will say that the hallways are very dark. So if you have clients who might not appreciate that, that might not be a good choice for them. And at the moment, they don't have any twin-bedded rooms. So we're hoping that in those rooms that they're finishing, that they're gonna put some twin-bedded rooms, but at the moment, it's all kings and queens. If you have guests who kind of prefer a more traditional kind of luxury product, they want a familiar brand, the Marriott Tbilisi would be the perfect choice for them. It was renovated last year, so before the renovations, it would not have been a hotel we would have recommended, but they really did well in the renovations, and the rooms feel modern, they feel clean, but they still have a traditional feel to them. It's located on Restaveli Avenue, which is one of the main thoroughfares of the city. So guests staying here will be near shopping and cafes and a number of the museums and sites. For this hotel, the deluxe rooms are really nice, but I would recommend that you go up to at least the executive room so that you have access to the executive lounge. I just think it's nice to have that little area where you can grab a quick snack or a drink when you come back to the hotel without having to worry about ordering anything. So I'm including the Mercure Old Town Tbilisi. So if you have someone who's a really luxury product person, this is not the right hotel for them. But if you have someone who is all about location, 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 this is going to be the right hotel. This hotel is located right in the Old Town, which most of the hotels in the Old Town are really dated, or they have the casinos in them where smoking is allowed, so they're not really ideal. But this one, it's not gonna like impress anyone with luxury, but it's clean. The beds are actually very comfortable, and it has this beautiful rooftop bar that you can have great views over the city in the Old Town. And this is probably an oddity, but I'm gonna mention a hotel that I don't love, the Biltmore. So the only reason I mention this is because we get asked for it a lot, because it technically is a 5-star luxury product. So of course, why wouldn't we offer it? And while technically it is the most luxurious hotel in the city, it's kind of this playground for the young and rich from the Arab world. So it has a big casino in it, which is what attracts them. And it means that there's a lot of smoking that goes on in the rooms, even though it's a non-smoking hotel. The fee for smoking in a room is something like $25. And so it's kind of like, if you're a smoker, you're already paying a couple $100, $1,000 a night for a suite. What does it matter to pay $25 smoking fee? So that's the reason that we don't like it, is because most of the times when we stayed, we found that the rooms do have that kind of smoky scent, which a lot of our guests do not appreciate. Okay, so now I want to move on to kind of some farther regions that you can visit. So the Capetti region can be done as a day trip, but I think it's absolutely worth doing as an overnight. It is the big and really the best wine region of Georgia. You could easily spend 2 days exploring here. If you have people who are really into wine, this is going to be worth it for them to stay in the area to get to all the wineries quickly. The 2 big towns here are Siganagi, which is what's on this picture, and Talavi. So as you can see, they're these like really cute, quaint towns. And then one of the big sites here is Sinandali. and it is the House Museum of Prince Alexander Chejvadze, which might not mean anything to you, but it's a really big deal there. So this was like his traditional home, and it has a winery on it. And now they've actually built a Radisson Collection hotel on the estate. So it opened in 2019, and it's one of only a few Radisson Collection hotels in the world. So it is really a great choice for staying in this area. The hotel has a sommelier on staff. It has a special tasting room. It has a couple restaurants, a rooftop pool, a spa. The rooms here aren't overly spacious, so we do recommend going up in category or choosing a terrace room just to kind of add some outdoor space. And then a lot of the rooms have views either of the vineyards themselves or onto like the mountains kind of in the background, because there are like nice, beautiful mountains in the background. So this is a really beautiful hotel. And it's, again, if you have people who are just going to do a day trip, they don't want to do a whole bunch of wineries, you can do Capetti as a day trip. But if you have people who are really into wine, going to want to do a few wineries, I definitely recommend staying at least one night. Another area that you would have to overnight for is the Borjomi area. So it's great for 1 or night 2 stay. So mostly because from here you can explore things like Vardzia Caves, which is up here on the left-hand side, as well as Rabati Castle and Ublitski. The town itself is a spa town. It's kind of known for its healing sulfuric waters. It does have a nice little parkland that you can walk through. The town is not super huge, so it's really the sites that are nearby that make it worthwhile to come and stay overnight in Borjomi. And here the hotel is a Crown Plaza. It's actually, oddly enough, a staff favorite. Looks like a rather large hotel, but an entire floor is the spa. So it's kind of almost as much spa as it is hotel. And the rooms are really comfortable, they're large. So it is a nice choice. We do have people who like to come here and stay here first after they arrive in Georgia, because it's kind of a little bit relaxing. And then the other region is going to be Kazbeki. So if you've ever seen a brochure for Georgia, there's a big, beautiful mountain picture. That was probably Kazbeki that you were looking at. It's one of the most iconic sites for the country. And I mean, this is just a picture that one of us took on like our cell phone. So you can imagine what a beautiful site it is. So it does require you, though, to devote a couple of days in order to get out here and see the sites in the area, because it is kind of at the far north part of Georgia. And here the hotel we recommend is Rooms Kazbeki. So it's the best choice in the area. The hotel looks right at the mountain range. You're perfectly positioned to visit sites in the area, or if you have guests who want to do a bit of hiking, you can hike on your own, or we could do guided hikes in the area. So that's it for Georgia, and now I'm going to move on to the third country, Azerbaijan. So most guests here are only going to visit Baku, and then whatever they can do is day trips from Baku. If you have anyone who is okay with a longer drive, you can go by land between Georgia and Azerbaijan and visit the town of Shecky, which I do have a slide on later. It's famous for the Khan Summer Palace. The big thing there is that when you go by land, the land border is a little more difficult to cross, just in the sense if you have to physically walk across the border. You know, I've done it. It's a 15-minute walk, and you have to take your own bags with you because the cars can't go across. So that's just, you know, if you have someone who's dedicated to going to Shecky and that walk's going to be okay for them, it is a really fabulous site, but we don't recommend it for most of our guests.
Jody, can I just stop you briefly? We've got another question.
Of course.
Is it possible to get around Georgia and Armenia by helicopter?
So I've never had anyone do it in Armenia. I'm sure it's possible. But yes, for Georgia, we've had people who go from like Tbilisi, from a private airport outside of Tbilisi up to Kazbeki, because they don't want to do the drive.
And do you know what type of helicopters are used for this, or?
So there are a couple different sizes. I am not someone who knows like a great deal about planes, so I don't have like their exact specs offhand, but I'm happy to send that information to you from what we've used for previous guests.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. So yeah, this is going to be the one thing here, and I don't ever want to scare anyone, because Azerbaijan and Armenia are in technically like an active conflict. It's a border dispute over some land that they both lay claim to. Azerbaijan does not let anyone who they feel is Armenian into the country. So if you have anyone with an Armenian last name, which is like you have like a Kardashian where it ends in IAN, they probably should not try to go to Azerbaijan. It's just often, even if they have a valid visa, they'll be given a lot of trouble at the border. So just something to be aware if you have anyone who has an Armenian last name, even if the heritage is pretty old, Azerbaijan might not be a part of their itinerary. So Baku is the capital here. It's kind of the city of winds in a land of fire. It's completely different from the rest of the region. Even from the rest of Azerbaijan, it's different. So Azerbaijan has a lot of oil wealth, and a lot of it is around Baku, and that's going to be very evident just even in the architecture. You have lots of modern buildings. It's very clean. It's going to feel more like a Dubai than it is going to feel like a Tbilisi or a Yerevan. It does have these beautiful old sites though. So you have this old town. You can do them, we typically do them as walking tours because it's very difficult to get cars into kind of these tight, narrow cobblestone streets. And we also think an evening boat ride is a great experience. So you can do it as like a public cruise that you can just buy on the spot the day of, or we can book a private cruise that goes along the water. So you can kind of take in the scenery. So like the flame towers, which are those 3 kind of arched towers, high rises, they are beautiful when they're lit up at night, and they'll kind of do different colors, and it's a bit of a light show. So it's really pretty from the water. So just some other sites that are in the city. There's the Green Market. It's one of the best markets in Azerbaijan. It's a great way if you kind of want to mingle with locals and get a feel for local foods. If you were planning on picking up some like treats or something to bring home, this is kind of a great place to do it. And like its neighbors, Azerbaijan has its own kind of bread that it's very proud of, which is tendir. So it's always best when you eat it within an hour of it being made, and we can arrange master classes or demonstrations on some of the Azeri specialty foods like this. So 2 big museums here are the Capetti Museum, which is my favorite. It's really beautiful done. So in it, they have all of these beautiful museum they are carpets that are in the museum. So they are like dating back hundreds and hundreds of years, and they have the information about them, about where they were found, about the different techniques that were used in dyeing and creating them. And they also have volunteers there doing traditional weaving to kind of show how the carpets are created, and you can see how long it takes to make one. You can even try your hand at it. It's very satisfying to do. So they have stations where you can see how you would do at it. There's also the Aliyev Cultural Center, which is a really unique museum. So it's kind of a mix of museum and propaganda. So very interesting. It has exhibits on traditional Azeri things, as far as like, they go from traditional like Azeri garb and musical instruments and jewelry to information about the Aliyev family. And the museum itself is designed by Zaha Hadid, which is what draws a lot of American tourists there. It's just the architecture of the building itself.
Jody, before you jump on, what is the name of the river in Baku? Do you know the name?
The river?
It's not the river, it's the sea.
Oh, the Caspian.
Yeah, it's on the Caspian Sea. I think that's what we're asking.
Oh, okay. I was like river.
Yeah,
no, yeah.
The Caspian Sea. Yeah.
Okay. So this is the Etosha Temple, which is a Zoroastrian temple. It's a little strange in that it's actually been rebuilt. So this isn't the original one. It was originally destroyed, and then they came along and said, no, we should definitely have that here. So they rebuilt it according to archaeological excavation. So it's really unique, interesting history because Azerbaijan has a strong connection with Zoroastrianism. And Yanardog, which is just kind of this flaming hill, and it just kind of shows the nature of the area as far as how much natural gas and oil they have, and also just how the natural gas there affected the culture, specifically Zoroastrianism, because Zoroastrianism was really based around fire, and so having this land that was on fire was really important. Some extraordinary experiences that we can do kind of there in the city. There's a Nobel House, so not a lot of people know that the Nobel family of the Nobel Peace Prize actually made a lot of money here in Azerbaijan. So there is a Nobel family home, and we can do a private visit there. And it's just really interesting to kind of see that connection between, East and between the West and this country, and kind of the oil money that then led to the Nobel family being so great. Other places that you can go visit, so Gobistan is this place where you have, petroglyphs, and it's just like this really beautiful area, and they kind of talk about early man here in the area and what they found. I will be honest, the museum can be a little strange with some of the science. But it is a really interesting area. And from there, you can also go and there are what they call mud volcanoes. So it requires you to be a little more active, but it's really interesting. It's where basically the pressure pushes this liquid mud up, and it forms kind of these little mud volcanoes that are cold. So it's just like a really interesting place to see what naturally happens with all that pressure from the natural gas. And kind of an odd thing is there's actually a lot of Jewish heritage here in Azerbaijan. So if you have guests who are interested in Jewish heritage, this could be actually a very interesting country for them to visit. They have a long history of Jewish settlements here. In modern times, there is a group located in the village of Kuba called the Mountain Jews. They have their own language, their own oral history, and it's rather unique. And additionally, even in Georgia, there is Jewish heritage. So Tbilisi has 2 synagogues. There's a Jewish graveyard in a former village in Siliguri, and Kutsai has a long Jewish history and 3 synagogues there. So this area, while it might not come to mind for Jewish history, it actually does have a really interesting Jewish history here. So 4 hotels here in Baku. We only really have 2 that we love. The Four Seasons Baku, it's kind of perfectly located. You either get views of the Caspian Sea or you get views over the city. And while the Caspian Sea views are often sold as like an upsell, we actually think the city views are the better views here. Some of the rooms do have balconies, which is really lovely. It's located right next to the old city. They have a ladies only spa area, which is nice if you have solo female travelers or just an all-female group. This is actually the founder of our company, Greg Tupper's favorite Four Seasons in the world. So it is really a well-done hotel, even for Four Seasons. Newer to the hotel scene in Baku is the Dynamo Hotel. It's this gorgeous boutique hotel. It's located a little farther from the old town, but it's still very central. So it's only 10 to 15 minute walk to the medieval walls and 10 to 15 minute walk from a lot of the sites. The smallest rooms here are 430 square feet, so they are fairly spacious. And it has a beautiful spa and a wonderful restaurant. And it's really a great option for anyone who prefers either a boutique hotel or something with a local feel, or they just don't want to be in something as large as a Four Seasons. I kind of mentioned at the beginning when we started talking about Azerbaijan that there is a town called Shecky, and it's not super common for our guests to go there, but we do get a lot of requests for it. It's most well known for having the Khan Summer Palace that's located here and the Caravanserai. It's also known, it's a UNESCO Creative City Network place. So UNESCO heritage recognized them for their traditional stained glass. As far as within Azerbaijan, it's also known for its beautiful confections, and it has a very famous confectionery here. So that's what this picture is. I went and I think tried everything under the sun. And usually when you come here, you come by land. That does mean that it's a long transfer. So if, again, you would have to, typically you would come over the Georgian border via land. So you would have to do that land crossing at the Georgian border. If you do come and stay in Shecky, it's also on your way down to Baku, possible to go visit the Juma Mosque and Lahich. And Lahich is famous for having, it's like where all the traditional artisans of Azerbaijan are. And it's kind of just like this artisan enclave, and it has been for a long time. So that's a great option as well. And Lahich is something you can do. It's a long day, but you can do it as a day trip from Baku as well.
Jody, just before you move on, we've got another question.
Of course.
What are the price points at the top caliber hotels, and are they in general lower or similar than what's in Western Europe?
So it's gonna be more affordable on the hotel front generally. Now that being said, because for example, in Yerevan, there's only one luxury property. That luxury property can basically charge what it wants. I hate to put it that way, but it really is. It doesn't have any competition. So if you want a luxury product, you're gonna pay to stay there. So it's not as expensive as, say, Germany or France or Switzerland for an equitable hotel, but it is going to be more expensive than maybe people think when they initially think of this region.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I will say, so after we're done, I will send an email, and it will include our sample products, just our sample itineraries, so you can kind of get a feel for how much time you need to accomplish these itineraries, and it also gives a baseline for pricing. So a starting price for this area would be about $650 per person per day for 2 people traveling together. And it's not going to be as expensive as like Germany or Switzerland, but it's often more expensive than people think it's going to be. And that's mostly because, as I mentioned, English isn't as widely spoken in the region. And you often are going, especially if you're going to go overnight, your guide and driver goes overnight with you. So you basically have a guide at your disposal all the time. And if you're staying overnight, that guide and that driver is staying overnight with you too. So a lot of the cost is really in the services and just, paying for the driver and the guide to be at your disposal all the time. So again, not super expensive in comparison, but often a little more expensive than people think it's going to be. And then I always like to mention what you can combine it with, just because the flights can often be long and sometimes people want to break them up. So Aeroflot connects to the region through Moscow. So it's kind of a perfect chance to check out the Russian capital, or even we've had people do a full Russian program before continuing on. Turkish does connect through Istanbul, and a 2 to 3 night stopover in Istanbul is kind of a perfect way to break up those longer flights. I will say that depending on how Turkey and Armenia are doing at the time will often depend on whether or not that Istanbul to Yerevan flight is going. So just that does change sometimes. And then Qatar connects through Doha, and Doha's not one of our destinations, but I know a lot of our guests enjoy the business class services on Qatar, so that's just an option for guests who like that. Also, you can connect with Lufthansa through Frankfurt, but the connection times can either be really tight or require you to stay overnight there as well. There is a direct flight that goes between Baku and JFK on Azerbaijan Air. It can't be used, so you'd have to do it as a one-way flight if you were including Armenia as a part of your tour, just because you can't get directly from Azerbaijan to Armenia. So you'd have to do 2 one-way flights basically. But I like to mention it because, a one-way flight appeals to a lot of people. Or sorry, a non-stop flight. And then I just want to kind of, if you didn't see my face at the beginning, there are 2 in-house experts for the region, and that's Stella Bailey and myself. And you can always email us directly if you have questions about the region or someone interested. All of our email addresses are just our first name at exeterinternational.com. But if you're ever not sure who to email, you can send it to our general email address, which is up here. It's info@exeterinternational.com.